Hello everybody, and welcome to the first video that I'm going to be uploading. I need to talk about something that's very, very important, and that is how to improve society, right? Understanding how to improve society, because I feel like the right and the left have very specific viewpoints, and I don't feel like this is going to be a controversial video, just because the left beliefs that I'll be talking about, I feel like it's kind of universal, and everyone agrees that they believe that, and they generally think that's the way to improve society. So, first I can start off with the way that the right believes that we can improve society. So, the right, obviously, is the conservatives, Republicans. They believe that the way to a better society is almost always through the moral improvement of the individual, right? What can I personally do to make myself a better person? It's essentially like every person is facing their own weaknesses and their own flaws. They believe that like the greatest battle of the individual is not with external forces, but it's actually within themselves. It's inner forces, right? So that's what the right believes. The best way to improve society is to better oneself by looking at your own moral failings. Okay? The left, on the other hand, they believe that the way to a better society is by almost always through battling society's moral failings rather than the individual's moral failings. Right? That's why the left always concentrates its efforts on combating sexism, racism, intolerance, xenophobia, homophobia, Islamophobia. There's all these other evils that the left believes strongly hurt American society. So that's how they think making society better would be, is by improving the society, right? So there's not as much patience there, and I mean you see people blame people's shortcomings on society all the time rather than the individual. For example, Ronald Reagan had the quote, and I'll actually read it here: "We must reject the idea that every time a law is broken, society is guilty rather than the lawbreaker. It is time to restore the American precept that each individual is accountable for his actions." Right, that's Ronald Reagan, and that's a beautiful quote because it hits it so perfectly. Conservatives believe that if someone does something, that they are the bad, it's their fault. It's not because of, oh, well, they're poor, so that's why they commit crime. That's a big, big thing. Right? That's what the left does all the time. Rather than dividing the world between good and evil, the left divides it in terms of economics. They claim that the economic classes, not moral values, explain human behavior. So that's why, for a common example, you'll see people on the left say this all the time, that poverty, not one's moral value system or lack of it, causes crime. Right? You saw Don Lemon on CNN. This is an actual example. Back when those black teenagers kidnapped the poor white guy who had autism, and they tortured him and everything like that. Obviously, awful, whatever. But Don Lemon, he said it wasn't a hate crime because it's CNN, so they can't really get anything right. So he said it wasn't a hate crime, and he blamed what they did not on maybe they're just not good people. Maybe they just don't have good values. He said, well, I think they had a bad home life. So again, that's the left blaming external forces for people's shortcomings. They do it all the time. People even talked about a while ago how terrorists do what they do because we're just mean to them. But these were actual articles online on major news sources too, right? So obviously they don't understand the idea that people can just be bad people. It needs to be some external force, right? Whenever I debate any friends and I bring up the fact that, well, there's a large crime rate in the black community, the first thing they always say is, well, there's so much poverty there, and they don't talk about the fact that maybe there's a lack of moral values in those communities. It's always someone else's fault for the left. So now we can talk more about going back to the improvement of society. So if you look at from the founding of the United States all the way to probably like the 1960s, schools and parents concentrated very heavily on character education. And that's a key word here, character education, right? That's what the right believes is the better way to a better society, is by improving your own flaws instead of trying to improve all of society's flaws. So with the increase of leftist ideas going into schools and colleges in America, character education has pretty much been eradicated from schools in general. It's just not there. Instead, children now in schools are not told to focus on their flaws, but they're told to focus on America's flaws. Right? So that's a big problem, is the idea of focusing on the moral improvement of the individual has started to go away. I mean, it's crazy. There's so many people out there. There's so many Americans who are driven and just so passionate about fixing America, but while they do that, they're doing next to nothing to fix their own moral shortcomings. So Dennis Prager said it best in a quote that he said, "You cannot make society better until you first make its people better." And conservatives understand that. They understand that you have to take it down to a much smaller level. You can't just make society better by trying to change everyone at the same time. People have to be responsible and accountable for their own actions. And so they have to look at themselves and say, how can I be a better person? Can you imagine if everyone in the world did that? If instead of trying to focus on how we can make society better, every single person just focused on how can I make myself a better person? What can I do? Would we not have total world peace? Obviously with a few exceptions, but it'd be a lot better than trying to change society as a whole, because change is gradual. And I think the right understands that, and that's why they say it's one person at a time, where it's not quick enough for the left. You know, they have to change society. They have to fundamentally change things as soon as they can. Right? That's why, activists is almost always assume that it's someone on the left, whenever that term is used. So that's the major difference between the right and the left on how to improve society. The right believes that it's through the individual. The left believes that it's through society. However, you can't make a society better without first making its people better. So that is one reason, I think from this standpoint, that the right just understands this better. Right? So that's just the first thing I wanted to talk about in this video today. Hopefully you guys learned something. It wasn't too controversial. I didn't want to come out swinging with something crazy, but it's just something to think about, Just something to think about. So that's going to be it for this one. Should be coming out with more videos in the near future, and that's going to be it.